Good morning and welcome. Thank you for being with us. My name is Chris Page and this is Decolonizing LGBT Christian Movements. We're gathering as a part of the Rolling Away the Stone Conference on November 1st, 2017. This session will be videotaped. It is being videotaped and eventually will be available on the website for the LGBT Religious Archive Network.
Oh, that would be my card.
So decolonizing LGBT Christian movements, decolonizing, and I'm just making introductory remarks and then to frame our conversation. So decolonizing is a really big word. Decolonizing is about grappling with the reality that some of our greatest losses come not from our sworn enemies, but from would-be friends and even mentors in our own movement spaces. Decolonizing is about closing the gap between best intentions and lived realities, between great aspirations and real-life impacts. To talk about wanting to decolonize LGBT Christian movements is about loving ourselves enough to be willing to ask hard questions about our work together. It's about believing that we can do better because LGBT people deserve the best. We deserve the best things, we really do. And we can do that work together. Decolonization is about a praxis and an ethic, about both what we believe and how we behave. In preparing this panel, we sought to embody three things that we talked about: truth-telling, transformation, and healing. We acknowledge that some of what we may say may make some folks uncomfortable, but sometimes we need to be uncomfortable for the sake of love and for justice. Just like the parables of Jesus rocked the boat and made people uncomfortable. We've given one another permission to be imperfect and even polite. In the service of the critical work of truth-telling, we gather at a time of year when the veil is thin, when the presence of ancestors and otherwise is most vibrant. Our lost loved ones, disappeared and forgotten of our movements, gather with us today and listen for a word of acknowledgement. We gather not just for ourselves, but to honor them and their sacrifices. So in this work, in this 90 minutes that we have together, we seek not just to talk about history, but to conjure transformation. We invite you to reach with us for healing and hope in the midst of interlocking systems of oppression that are designed to drive us to despair. We will each present for maybe 8 minutes. We'll each introduce ourselves, and you can find more details and bios on the app and on the website and in the program book as you wish. Haven will endeavor to keep us on track as they have these past weeks through our preparation phase. And when each panelist has spoken, we'll begin a dialogue, a crosstalk dialogue, and then open the floor to Q&A from the audience. Are we doing something with cards? So we don't have cards. We will be improvising. If you have a scrap of paper, okay, so we will be improvising some card-like pieces of paper to gather questions, and we'll probably do verbal questions as well. Okay. Other logistics before we get started? All right.
Since I'm the first person speaking, I'm not going to put the paper up now, so you can't ask me any questions. Good morning. My name is Larry Rodriguez, and I'm a member of Founders Metropolitan Community Church in Los Angeles. I'm a little different from the other panelists. MCC was founded as a welcoming church to LGBTQI people, so those issues are not our major struggle within our church. It doesn't mean we don't have struggles within the church, far from it. It's just that the focus of those struggles is shifted. And I'd like to share a story from my life with you. I was born and raised Roman Catholic, not just any kind of Roman Catholic, but Roman Catholic with a Mexican twist. But in 1969, when I began to recognize that I was gay, I searched for another faith community and found Metropolitan Community Church. There was only one MCC at that time, and Reverend Troy Perry was my first pastor. I quickly got involved in the church, first as an usher, then serving on the board of directors for 10 years. I also got involved in the denomination, serving as a lay delegate to the General Conference and chairperson of the Bylaws Committee. And at the Miami Beach General Conference, I was elected to the Board of Elders, the second lay person in the history of the denomination to be elected to that position. And just so you can put the story in context, the Board of Elders at that time in MCC's history was like the College of Cardinals, because the Board of Elders elected the moderator, which was the Pope. One of my earliest experiences as an elder took place right here in St. Louis. The Board of Elders had assigned me as the elder liaison to the Mid-Central District, and St. Louis was the site of their next district conference. I arrived on Friday in St. Louis. It was in May. It was a lot warmer than it is now. For the opening of the district conference, and there were two meetings in the schedule for that meeting. One meeting was for the clergy, the other was for the laity. And the program book clearly stated that the clergy meeting was only open to clergy, but the meeting of the laity was open to everyone. So I went to the meeting of the laity. The lay people were so excited that I was present. You know, this was the first time they'd ever had an elder in one of their meetings, and we spent a great time talking about lay stuff. The next morning at breakfast, I was read by more than one clergy who were upset that I had not joined their meeting. I explained to them that the program book clearly stated the meeting was only open to clergy, to which he responded, "But you're an elder." To which I responded, "But I'm not clergy." Oh. The business meeting began later that Saturday. Clergy were seated on the clergy house on one side of the aisle. Lay delegates were seated on the other side of the aisle. I came into the room, sat at the back of the observer section. And towards the end of the business meeting, there was time allotted for bylaw proposals to change the denomination's bylaws. Someone rose from the clergy house and made a motion that would have changed the denomination's bylaws so that only ordained clergy could serve on the Board of Elders. Now, understand, I'm sitting in the back of the room. The temperature of the room suddenly went through the roof. After a long and very passionate debate, a vote was taken. The proposal passed almost unanimously in the clergy house, but was defeated unanimously in the lay house, and therefore was defeated. It had passed both houses. And the next morning, Sunday, was the closing worship service of the district conference. I'd been asked to bring greetings from the Board of Elders to the district, so I arrived early at the St. Louis church. It was a former Catholic building at that time. I went inside, a few people were already there, and I sat in the second row. I figured I could sit in the second row, and when the time came, I could go up to my elder stuff and say hello everybody, and then go back to sit in the second row again. And then someone tapped me in the shoulder and said, "My presence was requested downstairs." It was a hot, how many people are from St. Louis? It was a hot, sweltering, humid day in May. You know what that's like? And there was no air conditioning in the building. All the clergy were there. They were getting ready for the processional. They were putting on their finest vestments, some of which I'd only seen in books or movies. There were ruffled collars, that looked like fluffy curtains around their necks, embroidered stoles that looked as heavy as a backpack, and chasubles and copes that may have made sense in the cold, unheated cathedrals of Europe in centuries past, but made no sense in hot, humid St. Louis in May. They had decided as a liaison elder, I needed to be a part of the processional, and that's where the fun started. Some argued I should be at the front of the processional with the deacons and other lay people. Others argued I should be at the back because I'm the visiting elder. I argued I could just sit in the second row like I had planned and go back again. No, that would not do. Finally, it was decided my place would be side by side with the district coordinator, who was like the bishop in other denominations, at the end of the processional. I went upstairs and stood at the front of the church in the sun. I was sweating in my sports coat. I could only imagine what it was like under all those vestments. The people inside began to sing, "All hail the power of Jesus' name. Let angels prostrate fall." And I heard a voice inside my head say, "Remember this moment." Where just moments before there had been arguments about who was more important than the others and what position the power of the procession they would have, the people, the laos, were singing that at the majesty of Jesus, even the angels would fall down in reverence. The church, where the Spirit breathes fresh wisdom and understanding into it, can be a mighty force for justice. But when the church robes itself in customs and traditions, especially customs and traditions of dominant cultures, it can be an equally potent force to maintain the norms of that dominant culture, just or unjust.
Good morning, my name is Mel Soriano, and I'm on the planning team here at Rolling the Stone Away, so you would think I'd want to get away from a really complicated topic like this, and somehow I ended up on this panel. This could really be its own conference, much like a 90-minute discussion. I am here, I come from Pasadena, California, just down the street from Larry, and All Saints Episcopal Church, and I'm a member of the planning team because I'm on the board of directors for Integrity USA with the Episcopal Church. And I too was raised Roman Catholic of a different flavor. We were cooked with Filipino spices in my upbringing. Filipino spices in Chicago. So immigrated to Chicago with a lot of baggage that I didn't know existed, that I didn't realize was a heavy part of my upbringing, which was Spanish colonial Catholicism. And it didn't hit me until I started to realize that, hey, wait a second, I'm in junior high now, and whenever I go to the Chicago Public Library and read about my same-sex attraction, it says it's okay, and that it's all right, and that this is not something that you should feel guilty about, and that people who know better than you will be able to tell you what you should be doing. And that was very disruptive to me and very hard to understand. So I was born in the early 60s, and so I came of age during the AIDS crisis. And so that was an important part of my understanding of how things can and should work and how things can collapse and fail. It was brought up a moment ago at the earlier session that in 1981, here I was in high school. By this time I'd moved to California because it wasn't freaking cold in the wintertime. Nice flowers and things like that. And so the family was like, yeah, why are we living here? You go out on Christmas vacation, and after Mass you go, we're going to go to the beach. And it's just like, what? That's just insane. And the news articles started to come out about GRID, and you just thought, no, so there's some sort of cancer now that has to do with gay people, and I had by that time started going out to discotheques. There was a club in West LA called the Odyssey that was open, and you could be 16 years old and on up, and you couldn't drink, but you had a wristband that said you couldn't drink, and if you snagged a drink from your boyfriend who was a little older, and you knew this was going on, and yet the information wasn't getting out to you. All you got was from the newspaper. And if you weren't connected in, and you've already stepped away from church because you've felt excluded, where do you get your information? Where does a person of color get their information? So by 1982, when they gave it, they realized it's a disease and started calling it AIDS. Some of us were in full freak-out mode, like, what is this stuff? I started going to the Hollywood youth rap groups, and there was a kindly old man there. He was just really nice, and of course I was too young to realize it. that Harry was not just any old Harry, he was Harry Hayes, Mattachine Society, Radical Fairies. But he would welcome us every week to this youth rap group in this tiny bookstore that was eventually turned over to the One Institute, which I volunteered at as well. And I met other people of color who were able to say, yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? Because now you have the cultural stuff on top of things, and you can't talk about it. There's no one to talk to. Everything that you hear about is coming out of the white press or from white folks, and we don't know if it applies to us. Does it apply to us? And does it apply to us, to kids, and for the women? Does it apply to us? You know, there was a lot of confusion at that time. And it was also a time of like Boy George and things like that, so it's kind of like, oh, like it's hip to be bi, and so there's straight guys kissing just for experimentation and just showing that they're able to try new things, and it confused the living daylights out of us. And yet, a couple of years later, in 1985, the Red Cross bans. I had been donating blood since I was 16 years old to the Red Cross, and I had my 5-gallon pin, and the Red Cross goes and bans for life any blood donated from gay people, which just broke my heart. I was a volunteer at the Red Cross at the time, and so you're hearing all this information that had no bearing on reality. There was so much going on, and we did not know what to do. And what we did was we fell back on what happened in the 1960s and the 1970s, which was we bonded together as a community and we mourned it together. We grieved together, and we realized we could get sympathy from the mass media and from our families by talking about the people who died and by sharing our stories with other people in a way that moves beyond some of these structures of oppression that we were facing. And soon, by the late 80s, we got past that and realized it was time to get into a mode of activism. So by 1987, we had the AIDS Club and the first marches in Washington, D.C., and that drew us out of our time of mourning and drew us into a time where we got to say, this is where we need to go to address these issues. I'm glad to say that what we're looking at today, both in the church community, and I finally came back to church in 1999, excuse me, when a straight ally said, you know, there's a church in Pasadena that you might want to go to. And I said, you know, I'm gay. He's like, duh. Oh yeah, okay, you can tell. And that it is in that activism, it is in that reaching out, and it is in that radical welcome to the other that I find that we can systematically address the systematic issues facing us today.
Hi, I'm Chris Page again. I am founding executive director of Trans Faith, a national organization working around transgender spirituality. And I am a child of this movement. And when I say I'm a child of this movement, I mean that I came out as a lesbian. Now that's not who I identify as now, but I came out as a lesbian in 1994 into a predominantly white, Protestant, gay and lesbian Christian movement, and I'm a child of that movement. And that movement, elders who are on the stage and in other rooms, are folk who taught me that God loves me just the way I am. Taught me about being brave and about the joy of laughing together and crazy resistance to the powers that be. Taught me to be authentic and truthful and prophetic. And then I started to wrestle with my gender identity. And I was connected ecumenically through Christian Lesbians Out and through The Other Side magazine and through different work as the internet was at its very beginning stages of emergence as a tool for connecting And I reached out to all these groups, the groups that sponsor this conference, and said, I am looking at my gender identity. Who should I talk to? Your website says lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. At the time, I didn't know that the B and the T were really new, and whether those were there because funders had asked for it or because there was actually work that was being done. And I asked, who do I talk to? Your website doesn't have much on anything on transgender issues. And other than Erin Swenson, folk couldn't really point me to anybody. That doesn't mean that the folk weren't there. And I founded a little website called Transfaith Online, and things moved on from there. That's not the story I'm telling today. What I want to talk about in terms of decolonizing our movements is about segregation. And not segregation like Jim Crow, like sit in the back behind a Jim Crow segregation, but how we have different communities. And we like to talk about how we're one big happy family and diversity, and we added the people of color, which is like, I'm not saying that because that's the way that I would like to talk about it, but we as a movement talk about how we added in race and we added in gender when that's not actually how